Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, we are going to start to create our Android application. So the first thing you need to start an empty project. I'll call it WebRTC. Yeah, that's it. We use Kotlin language and we create our project. Let's wait for Android Studio to create our project. After that, so my Android Studio requires JDK version 11, so I'll go to project structures and go to SDK location, click on Gradle properties and use your JDK version 11. Sync that again, and after that you're good to go. Also, if you haven't faced this issue, it's also okay for you. First thing, let's add our dependencies to our application. It's a WebRTC dependency in Java WebSocket for the WebSocket and JSON to convert our message and send it to our socket server. I'll put the link of the project inside the description of this video. So if you want to copy these lines, you can reach out there. So after that, let's create our layouts first. Since it's not a designing tutorial, I'll copy and paste the code for our activities. Our main activity is going to be something like this: an edit text and a button to log in to the call activity. So pretty simple. I want to create a new activity, an empty activity, and I'll call it call activity. And after that, I'll paste the code inside it. I'll explain to you what happens here. So we will have three layouts. First is a calling layout that is going to get us the user that we are going to call and a button to start a call. And the next layout is going to be the notification layout, which is gone for now and is going to be something like this. And after that, after we received or started call, we will hide these two layouts and show our calling layout, which is here, a full calling layout. So pretty simple, nothing too special. If you want to copy the code, you can reach it through the GitHub source that I'll put inside my description link in this video. So pretty straightforward. And I'm using the view binding tool that makes using widgets pretty easier. So let's start from the main activity. I'll create a binding object from activity main binding. It's going to be a latenit var, and inside my onCreate method I'll initialize it is equal to activity binding.inflate and pass the layouts inflator to it. And after that, I'll put the content view to binding.root. Pretty straightforward. So here I want to say that if every time my enter button is clicked, so set on click listener, I'm gonna create an intent, or let's start activity and pass our intent to the call activity. So I'll create an intent object with this as a context or the beginning, and call activity. And also I want to add some extra as the username and pass the value of that edit text to it. So I'll pass the binding.username.text to string. So whenever I click on the enter button, which is this button, I'll get the username and pass it, and I'll start activity and go to the call activity. Looks like I have a typo error. Call activity. Okay, so let's initialize the binding here. Late init var binding, so activity call binding, and here I'll initialize it like this: activity call binding dot inflate and pass the layouts inflator to it. And also set content view to binding.root. So let's test our app. I'll pass my name. Looks like I forgot to add my activity inside my. I'll remove the extra and activity call. Okay, let's run it again. And we are good to go. But before that, let me remove this action bar. Go to values, themes, and change the dark action bar to no action bar. So let's run it again. And the action bar is gone. Okay, let's move on now. So after we receive our username inside our call activity, I'll create an object of username type of string and I'll receive it here. So username is going to be equal intent that get string extra with the key of username. Don't forget that this username has to be the exact as it is inside your main activity. So it has to be a null string, so I have to change it to a private and it's going to be null. So we have to check if we have this value, then we decide to use it. So for now, I'm going to create a socket class that is going to handle to connect to socket server and receive the data from it. I'll call it socket repository. And inside this class, I'll create an object of my socket instance. It's going to be a WebSocket client of Java WebSocket clients. And it also has to be nullable. And after that, I'll also receive my username from the class that it's going to use this one. So it's going to be a string and also nullable. After that, I'll create a method, call it initSocket as and initialize the socket. So I'll get the username from this method and I'll set my username is equal to this username. And after that, I'll initialize my WebSocket. So it's an object of the WebSocket client. It will have a URI. So I'll create a URI and pass the URL here, which I'll explain to you in a second. But first, let me create my socket object and implement its methods. So let me add some tags here. If you are using Android emulator, your WebSocket address is going to be, or your local WebSocket address is going to be WebSocket 10.022 and the port that you're given to your signaling server. But if you are using your phone as emulator, your local address is going to be this, that you have to open a CMD and write ipconfig and find your adapter inside this list, and mine is this one IPv4, and I'll write like this and the port. But if your WebSocket is deployed, you can add your WebSocket address here. So That's going to be your URI. So in this case, I'm going to use emulator, so my WebSocket address is going to be this. You also need to connect your client to your WebSocket like this. So right now we need a method or a way to interact with our WebSocket client. To do that, I'll create a new package here and call it models, and I'll create a Kotlin data class called message model, and inside that I'll create the model that I want to interact with my server. So there is going to be a type of string, and also there's going to be a name of string, which is the name of the client, and the target that is going to interact with, which also is going to be client but also nullable. Let's set the name also nullable, and the last thing is going to be data, which is going to be of type of any, and it also is going to be null. So whenever we want to interact with our WebSocket, I'll create a method, call it send message to socket, and it's going to have a message of message model as input, and we are going to try to send a message to our WebSocket. So we'll say WebSocket, if it's not null, then let's send some string to it, and our string is going to be a JSON object. So I'll use the JSON to convert it to a JSON object. So like that. So whenever my socket is open, I want to send a message to the socket. So it's going to be a message model, and the type is going to be to store the user, and the name is going to be my username, and the other values can be null because we don't need them. So whenever a socket connection is established and it's open now, so we want to save our client to the server. And also whenever we receive an error, we can log it using log. We can log D, our exception, and whenever we want to close, we can also log it like this. Let's say the reason. But whenever we receive a message from the server, we want to pass it to the class that created an object of socket repository. So we'll have to create an interface and interact with the call activity. So let me create a new package here and call it util, and add my interface here. I'll call it new message interface. Inside it, I'll create a function on new message, which will have a message of type message model. I'll close it and pass it this inside here. And whenever I received a message here, I wanted to pass it to my message interface here. But since it wants a message model, but we're passing it as a string, so we have to convert it from the string to message model. To do that, we can use JSON library, but before that, let me create an object of it. JSON is going to be a JSON. So I don't create an object of it every time I have a message. So I'll use from JSON, I'll pass the message to it, which is the string, and also I'll give the message model class to it. So it will convert this message to a message model. But before that, let's wrap it with the try and catch block so our application won't break. Pretty straightforward. So that's all you need for your socket repository. Let's implement this inside our call activity. So private var socket repository of socket repository, and it's going to be null. Let's create a function of init and do our initialize here. So like this, and our socket repository is going to be socket repository, and as interface I'll pass this class width and press alt enter, and let's call activity implement interface. I'll implement method. You will see the interface is implemented here. So every time that a new message is coming from socket repository, which is this method on message, this will trigger this method and give it inside my call activity. So let's use this function here, and after that I want to initialize my socket and pass my username to it. So it's nullable. I'll wrap it with a null check. So let's test it and start Visual Studio Code and run our WebRTC server that I have created in previous video. So inside my connection on message, I'll log my data here to see that if my client is sending some request. And after that, I'll start my Android Studio project. I'll open my emulator here, and also I'll watch my terminal here to detect any message. So I'll write my name and press enter, and we'll see that my username Masood and the type of store user is called. So this method is getting used. So I'll store my username inside my WebSocket server. So that's it for this video. We will start our WebRTC clients on the next video.